and I just didn't want to miss a word. Now you were just
okay.
you were just in the segment right before this. You were just mentioning the two border patrol agents, Nacho Ramos and Jose Campion, who
No, this is another one. The one agent in Arizona was Brian Terry.
Oh, okay, all right.
Who, with his partner, was trying to see what was going on with some guys walking around in the desert with some AKs, and told them to drop them. And when they didn't, then Terry and his partner, because this was the rules of engagement that Napolitano had put down, fired a beanbag round at guys with AKs, and Brian Terry got killed. In return fire. Now the partner was able to then fire a real bullet, and then the bad boys ran away. And evidently these guns are so cheap in terms of the cash flow of the drug cartels, they just threw the guns, a couple of those guns down. Heck, they'll get some others. Whatever it costs, 500,000, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter to them. They just don't want to be caught with the goods, with the evidence, and so they drop it. And this is what happened in Mexico. It's what when the agent down there was killed. Same thing. The gun was just thrown down at the crime scene, and evidently the same thing happened with a Mexican police chief and his wife who were murdered. One of these gun runner guns, was laid down at the crime scene there too. Now in Mexico, it's big time prison sentence if you're caught with a gun that's not authorized, and it's very difficult to get anything in Mexico other than a little pea shooter. And you can have a gun in Mexico. You can have up to, I think, either a .32 caliber, maybe a .380, but nothing that's quote unquote military. And the same thing with long guns. You can have a shotgun, a sporting target rifle, but you can't have semi-automatics that have any kind of magazine at all. And it's very difficult to get a permit in Mexico. And when you finally get your permit, if you had the money, you had the time, the tenacity, there is one gun store in all of Mexico. It's in Mexico City. You got to go to that store, and if you live in some of the far expanse of Mexico, that probably means 3 days. 1 day to travel, 1 day to go to the store, and then another day to come back. It's probably be just a lot easier to talk to some friends and figure out where you can buy a real gun, black market, and just go do it. You can get it taken care of in a couple of hours instead of 3 days. It's just an extraordinary scene. Here you've got this near total gun control in Mexico, and you have an explosion of violence, of murders being committed with all kinds of firearms, and some of which can't even be purchased here in the United States. And for instance, one of the things that strikes me as a graphic example of the failure of gun control is Ciudad Juarez, right across the river of the Rio Grande from El Paso, Texas. In Juarez, they have a murder rate that is considered to be the highest of any city in the world. It is a really out-of-control place. It's not unusual to hear about kidnappings and murders and gun battles, and it's beginning to spread across into the United States. In Laredo, there's been a couple of ranches that were taken over. But in El Paso, the murder rate there is considered to be the lowest of any city of its size in the country of the United States. It's around, 7, 6.5, and it's 10 to 15 times higher than that right across the river. And the only difference really is that Texans can get a concealed carry permit and carry a gun any which way they want. And in Mexico, if you're carrying a gun, you're violating the law.
It sounds like gun control doesn't work that well, does it?
This is a pretty dramatic example, but here you've got our government, our ATF, under the Justice Department, running guns into Mexico for the purpose of getting more money, more agents, more power. These guys have been trying to, I want to emphasize their story is an obvious lie. They're saying, well, we wanted to follow those guns into Mexico, and so that we could, get to the leaders of these cartels. Really, the Mexicans didn't know they were doing this. It was illegal. It would be illegal to go into Mexico. You go into Mexico without the proper paperwork, and unlike the United States, if they find out that you're there illegally, they're going to put you in jail for a year. And if you go into Mexico with a gun, I mean, the agent that was killed down deep in Mexico didn't have a gun, even though he was assigned to work with the Mexicans as a kind of advisor, trainer, but he didn't have a gun. He couldn't have a gun. That's the Mexican law. And so you're going to go and try to make a bust on the drug cartel without a gun, without working with the Mexican authorities. Obviously, they're lying through their teeth, because the only other explanation that's available is the one I pointed to, that they're looking for the money, they're looking for the increased power, and that's what some of the agents who are blowing the whistle have been saying was the purpose, because they knew that this was not a law enforcement operation. This was not going to lead to any, it couldn't lead, it was not designed to lead to make any arrests of drug cartel leaders.
I've talked to Border Patrol agents all across the country, and they've told me we can stop the drugs, we can stop the illegals from coming over here. Our superiors won't let us.
Exactly.
And I did have Nacho Ramos on my show. I mean, he's the one that got put in prison for shooting a drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
And the drug and Homeland Security brought the drug dealer back to let him testify against him, gave him immunity.
Exactly.
Until he got busted the second time for running drugs, so they're protecting the drug dealers.
Yep, exactly.
And they're arming them. And
like the idea of an increase in crime at headquarters, because if there's an increase in crime, well, we need more budget, we need more agents, we need more power. It's that cynical, I'm afraid.
Creating a police state. Let me ask you now. Creating a police state. They are doing this. This is called the thesis and antithesis. You know, they're creating a problem. They are creating the problems here. And what happened to Gabriel Giffords? What happened? There had to be something behind that. This was another stage thing. Judge Roll, friend of Sheriff Max, and who Sheriff Max referred to as one of the honest federal judges. He had been threatened over 200 times, more than any other federal judge, and he showed up on a parking lot with a congresswoman, and there was no cameras around, there was no police around, there was nothing around.
Well, the sheriff down there in Tucson is a left-wing ideologue, and he knew that Loeffner was a dangerous guy. His department had been to Loeffner's homes on several occasions, and they knew that the guy had made death threats. The campus police at the local community college knew that, and as I looked into this, I found that this was a guy that they should have pressed charges against for his death threats, because in his last couple of years, Loeffner had just destroyed himself. He was into many different kinds of drugs as well as alcohol. He had dropped out of school. He had a satanic altar in his backyard. He had deeply immersed himself in nihilism, reading one of the major philosophers of nihilism, Friedrich Nietzsche. And when I read that helped explain what I think set Loeffner off against the congresswoman. About a year or 2 years before the shooting, he had gone to a similar event where she was having a town hall and it was outside, probably outside, I'm not sure of that, but it was another similar event where she was to open to the public. They can come and express whatever concerns they might have. And he, let's see, what did he say? He said, what does government mean if words have no meaning? Something like that. I forget the exact way he put it. And then apparently, because it was a nonsense question, she thought for a few seconds and then answered him in Spanish, which I thought, that was brilliant. In other words, you want to talk gibberish to me? I'll talk gibberish to you. And she turned and walked away. And from that point on, he began to stalk her. And again, the sheriff had to know that. And yet there was no protection provided for her. If they're not going to press charges to get this guy locked up, at least they ought to have a sheriff's deputy sitting there in the parking lot of that Safeway. That sheriff not only is a left-wing ideologue, he's an incompetent. He apparently doesn't know what to do when he sees a real bad actor. He's just there to rail against the American dream and blame Sarah Palin for everything. He's about as off as nut as Loeffner. But Loeffner became really dangerous because of his Satanism, his nihilism, and I forget the list of drugs that he had. One of them was even some sort of a wacko juice that you can even buy over the counter, but a lot of it was illegal stuff, marijuana, the least of it. This guy was a walking cocktail, and my guess is that the synapses in his brain just don't function the way yours and mine do.
Well, the ABC News called me within an hour of the shooting. Wanted to know if I knew Loeffner. I said, I don't know Loeffner. You know, never heard the name before you just mentioned it. You know, what are you talking about? You know, why are you calling me? Well, you're the Free American, aren't you? You know, this is more. I guess because the Congresswoman was Jewish. You know, they're going to Southern Poverty Law wants to try to point the finger at people like me and you and saying, oh, they're anti-Semitic. You see, they're anti-Semitic. No,
it was that hate speech from the right that it was Rush Limbaugh and Sarah Palin, and you know.
Yeah, that's what they tried to do. Michael Savage, Clay Douglas out there. Oh my God, you know.
And it turned out that the guy really wasn't very political, and his friend said he didn't listen to talk radio. But if he had any politics, it was he hated Bush, and he basically was on the left. But that wasn't what was. I don't think that's what was driving him. I don't think it was the left. I don't think it was the right. I think it was this horrible philosophy and worship that he had at his satanic altar. The New York Daily News or Post had a picture, which I happily was able to grab and store in my computer, of this satanic altar that he had in the backyard. All the evidence we need to explain what was driving him is out there in plain sight, and yet the media wants to blame it on their enemies. They want to blame it on conservatives, and sorry guys, but that dog don't hunt.
The picture of Loeffner that circulated on the internet, they made him look like a skinhead. How did that happen? I mean, this wasn't. It didn't even it looked like it was made up or something.
I think this might have been something that he did in preparation for his crime. It certainly made him look different from the young man that looked, very normal and decent when he had his short cropped hair. But my suspicion is that this was just part of his descent into the pit, and maybe it was also somewhat of a disguise, because I didn't recognize him. I had to study very carefully the pictures they had of him before he had shaved his head, and then the shaved head Loeffner. And part of the lack of the difficulty in recognizing the similarity between the two pictures was that leering grin that he had on his face was totally different from pictures of him when he was more normal. So this guy not only was a mess inside, but he managed to make it reflect outside. It was a thorough makeover.
They tried to, to me, they tried to portray him as a white supremacist or, you know, skinhead or something like that.
No, far from it. Absolutely far from it. This guy was not there at all. He had some, was it some kind of views of, his economic views were on the left, but they were very kind of undeveloped, and that really wasn't where he was. The guy decided that the congresswoman had dissed him when he asked her a stupid question, and that, in his world, I guess that was all he needed to think about. He had actually worked for her campaign, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 4 years before, and that's not working for the right, okay?
No.
But she's a liberal, and to say that somehow that makes him a skinhead, hello? These people have a knee-jerk reaction to anything that happens. Oh, it's got to be the right's fault. You know, anything untoward. The earthquake, that's Bush. No, that's Bush's fault. You know? Now, they make themselves look really silly.
Let me ask you about an internet rumor that's going on here. There's a trucker has put out on the internet that he delivered food to a Japanese encampment 60 miles south of Laredo. Have you heard any of that or been able to confirm anything like that going on?
Well, that would be in Mexico.
Yes.
And there's a lot of stuff going on in Mexico, but I didn't know that they needed a Japanese encampment to add to the strange things that are happening there.
Chinese, but there are also Chinese camps here in the United States. It's some kind of economic development, and they're hiring Chinese to work in these economic villages.
Wow. Well, I guess they own a lot of our debt. They might as well come over here to keep an eye on it, huh?
Are they? I'm just wondering. You know, are they trying to repossess it? You know, if we can't pay our bills, if we can't pay our debts, you know, are they just saying, okay, well, you can have this under eminent domain here? Is this? They do control. The Chinese do control both sides of the Panama Canal. They control Long Beach, and you know, we've since Nixon, they've been our favorite trading partners. I don't know. You know, seems a little strange behavior to a so-called communistic country, unless maybe we're all communists. Now, who won the Cold War, Larry? Or have we just been misinformed?
Well, and you know, one of the things that we've done to make the Chinese so competitive is with our taxes. We have the highest personal income tax in the world, and I think we have the, or almost the highest corporate income tax in the world. We've had, although it's a declining problem, we have had huge problems with unions and featherbed contracts and you know, just make work type stuff. That we've had regulation, environmentalism, OSHA, and then a litigious society where you can be sued for just about anything. And when you hear that businesses will say, move to Europe, because it's less litigious and therefore a better business climate, and they will have lower corporate taxes than in the United States. Europe, let alone businesses that move to other less developed countries, you know that we're shooting ourselves in the head. Our economic policies are absolutely aimed at the heart of free enterprise. We are such a vicious socialist environment, and that's why the Chinese have been able to be so competitive, because we've made it certain that a lot of our business just can't operate in this environment. It's crazy.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So I don't blame the businesses for taking their jobs out of the country, there aren't going to be any jobs at all if they don't move out of the country, because they're not going to be able to continue to operate in the United States under the conditions and environment that we've allowed to spring up. I sure hope the Tea Party movement sees this as part of its assignment, and that the people that are elected are going to be elected in part on their commitment to reversing this absolutely perverse set of conditions that are driving businesses either out of business or out of this country. I should have included the death tax in that. You know, say a family owns a farm and dad dies, the only way that in some cases they're going to be able to pay the taxes is to sell the farm, and probably not favorable price, and they'll sell it to a large corporation more likely than not. And so the death tax is what has actually done more to get rid of the family farm than probably any other single thing.
Well, let me. It just seems. It seems like an appropriate time to do this. Let me. And I find it really strange that we weren't taught this in school. At least not that I can recall. The Communist Manifesto. Just a summary, very quickly here. Number 1, abolition of private property. Heavy progressive income tax. Abolition of all rights of inheritance. Confiscation of property of all immigrants and rebels. Central bank government control of communications and transportation. Government ownership of factories and agriculture. Government control of labor. Corporate farms, regional planning, and number 10, government control of education. What have we what have we missed here?
Sounds like the United States to me.
You know, I took an oath in 1964 to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I read the Constitution, and this seems to me to be a direct attack.
We have enemies domestic just as much as we may have some foreign, but we better start dealing with the domestic enemies. We won't have to worry about the foreign ones.
Now, let me ask you something. I'm going through some court cases here. We've got the kid that was shot at Columbine, and tried to call attention to the fact that Dylan Klebold was owned, and Eric Harris were on psychoactive drugs.
Right.
Mark Taylor shot 7 times at Columbine, and he's been held in Arizona since he came through to see me. He's been held in a psychiatric hospital. He's supposed to be walking. I'm supposed to be walking him out on Tuesday. This coming Tuesday. We got him lawyers. We found we've been trying to raise money for him and make people aware of what happened to him and his mother, Donna Taylor. And so we're gonna be walking him out of there very shortly. We have made a difference here, Larry, and I mean, how can you keep somebody pinned away because you tried to bring the truth, and the same thing with this Loeffner. I mean, he was taking these drugs. Yep.
He was a walking drug cabinet. This guy was just really excessive, apparently, from what his friends knew of him. It had pretty much sealed him off from the rest of the world. He had very few contacts with friends toward the end, because he was just in a world of his own, and it was not a pretty world.
Do you have any very much hope? Who are we going to have? What kind of lineup are we going to have in 2012 legislatively?
For candidates for president, or stuff up on the Hill?
Well, let's deal with the president right now. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of choice. Sarah Palin, you know, had a brief surge of popularity, and then she wanted to go over and bomb Iran. What was that?
Well, I think Sarah Palin, I'm beginning to think she may not decide to take a pay cut and run for the presidency. She's doing very well right now, and she has a lot of influence in primaries. The governor of South Carolina, Nikki Haley, kind of came out of relative obscurity in the primary after the endorsement that Palin had given her. Now we see yesterday Michelle Bachmann getting close to throwing her hat in the ring. And she's a pretty fiery sort of candidate. She's very much the Tea Party sort of candidate. You've got the black business entrepreneur, the former head of Godfather's Pizza, Herman Cain, out of Atlanta. He's an actual announced candidate. I've heard him speak a couple of times, and I'll tell you what, if he managed to come out of obscurity and grab the gold ring, the brass ring, I think you and I'd be very happy. There's, I think, probably some others that are likely to get in. It looks like Mitch Daniels of Indiana. Mitch Daniels is no real conservative. He's a rhino. I would not be happy with him. He would only look good next to Barack Obama. But hopefully we can do a lot better than Mitch Daniels. Pawlenty of Minnesota, kind of the same thing. He's no real conservative. Both these guys don't get it on education. And Pawlenty was actually kind of active in screwing up his state's education program. So I'm certainly no fan of him there, although he did sign a concealed carry law that was put on his desk. So, you know, he's not 100% bad, but it's just, we can do better than that, I think. And so the two best that seem to be actually coming out to the starting line are Herman Cain and Michelle Bachmann. And I know I'm forgetting there's at least one or two others that are likely to run that are pretty good. But and then there's all these other folks that are out there. You know, you hear about Mitt Romney. Well, Mitt Romney, think Obamacare. That's what he did to Massachusetts. Mitt Romney signed an assault weapons ban, so-called. Mitt Romney is an establishment Republican, business as usual, devil take the hindmost rhino. Don't want Mitch Romney.
All right.
We're almost pretty much taken himself out of the race, so I don't think he's going to.
We're almost out of time, Larry. I want to tell you I really appreciate having you on my show, and of course you're welcome back anytime and as often as you care to. But your Gun Owners of America, let's give out some information here. This will be up on YouTube, and it'll be available to everybody on Blog Talk Radio and Blog TV. So give out some information on Gun Owners of America, and I urge everybody to sign up and support you.
Our web address is gunowners.org, and if you go there, there's a Take Action place where you can click and sign up for our free email bulletins. When you get those, they'll have email that you can send right off to your members of Congress, make it quick and easy to keep the heat on them so that they know that we want you to take care of business. And a lot of these things come up quickly, and the only way that we can really ask people to get involved is through the email. So go to gunowners.org. If you can't get on the web, you can call us for information at 888-886-GUNS. It's 888-886, and then the letters GUNS.
And Gun Owners of America is linked right below this show. All you have to do is click on Larry Pratt's name on my website, freeamerican.com, folks, and you can hear this show. And tell your friends about it. If you want to save it as to your default player, then it'll save it as an MP3, and you can pass it around. Larry, I'd appreciate it if you let everybody know about the show. You've been a wonderful guest. You make sense, and it's nice to know there's somebody out there that's really fighting for the Constitution and the people. It's our government, folks. We aren't the employees. We aren't the employees. They are. Larry Pratt, again, thank you, and God bless you.
You too, Clay. Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Call recording has been completed.
Okay. All right. Let's see if we've done this too. Okay.